Welcome to this part of the tutorials in JavaScript about the errors. So first of all, I'm going to create a new file for that, as always, and I'm going to call it error.js. Also, let's do this for our HTML file. So let me copy and paste one of the HTML files and rename it to error.html. Now here we go, we have HTML error.js. So now I need one of the tags here in the HTML file, and the ID here can be named error instead of names. So here we go. So let's start with the errors. Why do we want to handle the errors in any kind of language, such as JavaScript? So the reason we do this is that sometimes we're not sure that a piece of code is going to throw an error. And if that application throws an error in that specific part, the whole application will stop running, and the user is not able to do the rest of the things that he or she used to do with the application. So we want the program to continue and we don't want it to stop. So we want to handle the error so that if that error happened, then we will be able to continue, or we will be able to show the error to the user, and we do not face a crash in the program. So in JavaScript, we have some keywords in order to use and handle the errors. One of them is catch, one of them is try, the other one, and there are two other keywords that we generally use. And those words are, first of all, try, catch, throw, and finally. So each one of these phrases has its own block. So for example, we have try, then we have a block. This part is the main code to write, the main part we write our code in. So the piece of code that we want to cover for error handling is this part inside this block, try. And then we have another block for covering the error. So we want to catch the error. If the error happens anywhere, we want to catch it inside of this block. And also, there are times that we want to have the error printed out or shown in somewhere, but we also want to continue the program in the whole process, and in there we use finally. There are also times when an error happens and we don't want these two parts to happen, or there's times that, for example, something happens that is not necessarily not an error, but we want to throw an error. In those circumstances, we throw an error. So we have throw and we have a code block. It's just the same as raising an exception in Python. And by the way, we can write the name of the error inside of the variable. So copy it and write, for example, error, so that we can use this error inside of our code. So let's try one of these conditions. So for now, let us not cover finally and throw. And for now, let's write some kind of code that has a certain error. So normally, if, for example, you write a equals 5, so normally right now we don't have any error. And if I want to print out the error on one of our HTML elements, I can write document dot get element by ID, and here we enter our own tag here inside error.html, which is error itself. And so let's write error and then dot inner HTML equals to error, which is the actual error that is inside of this variable called error. So now if I run the code, Now if I run it inside of our browser here called error, so error.html. So let's run it inside of our browser here, and so let me also fix something else here inside our error. Let's see the errors, save this and refresh the page. As you can see, we have no errors printed out here, but if I do something wrong inside of my code, inside error.js and in this block, so imagine that we write const a equals 5 and then I write a equals 4. So I want to modify a constant variable. So let's see what error is being printed out inside of our HTML document, which says type error assignment to constant variable. So it completely prints out the entire error and it catches it for us. So now imagine that we have another tag here. So let me copy this and give it another ID. Copy and paste. Okay, there we go. So I'm gonna give this another ID, print, for example. And then I'm going to print out, finally print out some. We don't want to, we want to disregard the whole error and continue what we wanted to write here. So document dot get elements by ID, and then we can write our own ID, which is called print, and then we can write dot inner HTML. Then we want to write a here. So I hope a is defined in here, but let's see. Okay, let's save this and let us refresh the page. And by the way, let's see if we have saved error.html. There we go, we have, and here it is. So imagine if there is another variable. So b is, for example, 6, and we want to print out b on our HTML document. So let's save this and refresh the page, and as you can see, b is printed out as the result. So here we had an error, but the error didn't stop the whole process. But what if we didn't have this kind of thing in our code? So for example, let me comment this part and have this. So now consider that we had, for example, this part of our code, and then we had, okay, let me check the indentation. It's all right. And now let us print out something on our HTML document. So inside of our print, we could have printed a here. And because the error happens here, we shouldn't be able to see what is printed out for a. So let's save this and refresh the page. And as you can see, because we have an error, we'll not be able to see the amount of a, the result of a printed out. But if I comment this part, save the code and refresh the page, here you'll be able to see 5. So the error doesn't allow the continue of the process, the following of the process. So let us uncomment this part and get back to normal. So writing the code this way, writing the code that we want to write and then see the continue of that code, write the entire code, the rest of the code here will allow us to skip the errors And also, if we want to cover the error, be able to print that error. So for example, this part of the code, you're suspicious whether the code works or not, or there might be some errors during the process. So you can use try and catch, and finally, in order to cover all of the errors and also be able to continue the rest of the code.